Hi, everyone. My name again is Rebecca Missel, and I am the Director of Partnerships and Operations here at haggadahs.com. And I am delighted to be here this afternoon with our colleagues at the Jewish Grandparents Network, Lee Hendler and David Raphael. And we're going to, let me spotlight them for a quick moment. I can add Lee.
There.
And David, great. We are so thrilled to be here with you today, exploring what it means to host your multi-generational Seder in 2021. I am going to guide us through a quick intro to the haggadahs.com site and sort of our organization, and then we'll dive into conversation with Lee and David and have lots of time for questions. Eileen, if you can help with just admitting folks as they jump in, that would be super helpful. Give me just 1 second. There we go. Okay, we got there. So thank you again. We are delighted to have you here today with haggadahs.com for hosting your multi-generational Seder. And just a little bit of background, haggadahs.com is an organization that invites every Jewish person, regardless of their background, to find a place for themselves in the Passover story so that they may create more meaningful, personal, and connective Seders. We'll do a little site preview in a minute, but this is what you will see when you are sharing your Haggadah on our site. And haggadahs.com is, yes?
Rebecca, it looks like we're not seeing the presentation.
Oh, okay, let's try that again. Give me 1 second. There we go. Is that, everybody can see that? I can't see. Thumbs up? Yes, I see a nod. Great. Okay. Wonderful. So again, haggadahs.com is a project of custom and craft Jewish rituals, and we are a design lab for the Jewish community. We invite people to experiment with technology, media, and video, imagining new formats for engaging with ancient traditions. I'll also take a moment to say we are a 501c3 and we appreciate your donations. We run a little bit like public radio, where we are free to use, and we are really supported by folks like all of you who help keep this organization running. So what we're going to do today, like I said, is take a quick tour of haggadahs.com and then enjoy a discussion with the Jewish Grandparents Network and sort of diving into this question of what is it that we need from Passover now, especially with our multi-generational Seders. And then we'll have time for your questions and sharing some technical tips. Great. So with that, I'm going to shift us over to the haggadahs.com website. Great. Can everybody see this one? Another quick thumbs up? Yes? Okay, thank you. So this is what you'll see when you arrive at haggadahs.com. You can scroll down and find one of our existing Haggadot. I'm really delighted to share this year the 10-minute Dayenu Seder from the Jewish Grandparents Network has been updated, especially for 2021. And we'll share that link with everybody along with the recording of this session. If you are looking for a not 10-minute Seder, or what I think is really beautiful about the Dayenu Seder is that it works really well in combination with other Haggadot on the site. Especially we have this minimalist Haggadah. Another brand new one is this Jubilong Haggadah that we're just updated this year that you can mix and match. And what's great is that so many of the different pieces on the site fit well together. you can select a Haggadah like this. And because it's a PDF, everything is ready to go. You can, and a lot of people get stuck on this, so I'll just preview it now. If you want to see the other pages of this Haggadah, you just need to scroll down to this little tab and it'll allow you to see the other pages. Any Haggadah can be downloaded by clicking this button here. You'll hover over it even and you'll see it says download Haggadah. You'll be invited to make a donation if you're able. If not, you just click download and you can download that. Like I said, this Haggadah is available as a PDF and you can do that there. Other Haggadot on the site can be used as a template, which means you can customize it. And you can use the site. You can again scroll through and you'll see a full table of contents. If you're making your own Haggadah, you'll be able to look at it in this edit mode. And the edit mode allows you to sort of skip to any section of the Haggadah. So let's say Motzi Matzah being one of my personal favorite parts of any Seder, you can skip down to this section, see what you have here. You can add content if you want to personalize it just by clicking insert clip. And this will take you to this screen here where you can see all of our content that other folks have shared. And you can just click on any clip and hit select and then add selected clips. And that will add this clip to your Haggadah. Other great ways to use the site, if you go to the Haggadah Library, you'll see a lot of featured Haggadahs. You'll also be able to search. This one is really great. These are really our favorite Haggadot on the entire site, and ones that we've made, ones that our partners have made. So if you're looking for a pretty good representation of everything on the site, I really recommend this page, which is just the Haggadah Library. It'll come up as clip search. You can also use this page to search for different sections of the Haggadah. You can search by a specific part of the Haggadah, maybe Orchatz. You can search by categories, especially for folks here hosting a Seder with kids. You may want to select out for family and children. And you can also select if you just want images, text, audio, or video. Well, let's look at everything and see. I don't know how much Orchatz will have for kids, but let's find out. And this will take you great. So we have here a picture from our Haggadah coloring book that you can add in to your Haggadah. Everybody loves coloring. It's probably one of our most popular pieces. And here are a number of other clips related to Orchatz, this first hand washing that may have also an interest for kids. Thank you. Yes, the coloring book Haggadah. Yeah, Eileen shared it there. I would love to hear if there's folks in the chat who also want to share maybe some of the, if there's specific kinds of clips that you're looking for this year. Are there specific types of content you're interested in or specific themes of your Seder maybe that you are looking to include this year? Would love to see that in the chat and we can pop over to those sections. If you're looking for some of your favorite organizations who also have content on the site, you can click here on contributors and that will take you to this page where we've highlighted some of the folks who have really wonderful content on the site. These are partner organizations and individuals who have shared their resources with us. And it's a great way. I'll pick over here on PJ Library. They actually just created this brand new Haggadah that we really love. It's a series of videos featuring Shira Klein, who is a singer and educator. And it's a video playlist essentially for each step of the Seder. So if you are with a family and you're on Zoom and you just want to do videos and then maybe stop and talk in between each video, it's a great way to sort of chunk out the time. The videos are all fairly short. And so it's a wonderful way of sort of having time in your Seder to experience something together and then to take a pause. just check here. Great, thank you, Eileen. So with that, I'm gonna sort of switch my screen back for a second and come back here to our presentation. Can you get a thumbs up? Yes, that we can see this. Yay, all right, I did it right for once, excellent. So I would love just to take a couple of minutes and just invite folks as sort of like a transition into this conversation with Lee and with David to just spend a few moments thinking about sort of why we're hosting our Seders. So someone in the chat has shared interested in thinking about COVID and social justice. Other people may just be wanting to celebrate, right? Like today, I live in New York. Today it has been a big day here. This is a year since things really started to shut down here in New York. And it's pretty special for us to have reached this moment, right? Like what better time to say Shehechianu than after this year? So we really think that any Seder, any gathering is really driven by purpose. And that decision really drives every other decision. So how you'll gather, when you'll gather. We were on a call earlier today with people talking about having a brunch Seder this year, especially since that second Seder is on a Sunday. Maybe instead of a nighttime, you want to mix things up and do brunch, which is, I know, highly irreverent and different, but also maybe a better time depending on how the witching hour hits in your family. It guides what you'll eat during the Seder and what you'll read. So if you're having a kid and family friendly Seder, that might be a different set of readings, a different conversation than if you're having a really COVID focused Seder. Also thinking about who you'll be with. Will you be gathering in person, in a pod? If the weather's good, maybe outside. Will you be gathering in a larger group on Zoom? People from different time zones, I know, is going to be a fun logistical challenge again this year. And really, at the end of the day, this purpose is what hits at that essential Passover question of, why is this night different from all other nights? Always also important, just as like a couple of other quick tips, to remember to be a host, to think about what the purpose is of your Seder, and then use that hosting duty with authority and generosity, that you're setting the rules for this temporary world. So you may want to think about beginning your Seder with a transition, with music. You may want to invite your guests to all dress in a certain way. I think pajama Seder could be a lot of fun for folks this year. Or fancy dress, all those fancy dress clothes that have been sitting in our closets for a year. I think is a great way to rediscover your wardrobes. You may also want to invite folks to have something with them in advance. I think this is a really great point to invite kids, especially. I think it's always fascinating to see what kids think is important and what kids really are attached to and how they sort of have put together the holiday in their minds. So inviting kids to bring with them something that's symbolic from the last year, or something that they want to bring to the Seder plate can really be a fun, creative way to engage them. And then finally, just thinking about reminding everybody that we're not just these squares on a screen, that we are here, and the Seder is an opportunity to engage all five senses. So can you think about different visuals? That's why I loved the somebody has a Zoom background with matzah in the shape of a Jewish star. That's a great way. So custom Zoom backgrounds, thinking about smells and tastes. The Seder really lends itself to that, whether it's the maror or the haroset or the parsley, what does the parsley smell like, and is it springtime? Thinking about touch and sound. And I'm giving everybody a role in your Seder too, I think, is especially with a family and multi-generational Seder, that giving everybody a way to feel that they're a part of it is a great way to combat that sort of like Zoom fatigue, but also just like the challenges that I think a lot of us are facing in like getting excited about doing something again. I think the giving people a role and a purpose for themselves in the Seder is a great opportunity. So I'm gonna stop sharing and invite everyone to continue posting your Seder purpose in the chat. And if you have any questions, we will have time for questions during our conversation today. But I wanted to shift first into really talking with our guests, our special co-sponsoring guests here today, Lee and David from the Jewish Grandparents Network, and to just get to hear a little bit more about you. And what I'd love to hear first, because I think it's just like a fun sort of transition, is I would love to hear if there's a favorite Passover ritual in your families. I'm going to unmute you both. Oh.
Sure. David, you want to go or you want me to?
Well, you know, it's, I think there's two that stand out. Each year we try to choose something that's happening in our world and in our country that speaks to the values and the lessons of the Seder, you know, Avadim Hayinu. And in every generation, it's our responsibility to view ourselves as if we were, you know, slaves. So we try to pick out whether it's the challenges of migrants attempting to come into America, issues, women's issues or issues for minority communities. We try to engage in readings that speak of the challenges of those communities so that we recognize that part of what the Seder is about is to view ourselves as if we were exiting Egypt, because there are people who are still exiting Egypt to this day.
We have a rather silly tradition that that is wonderful because everybody looks forward to it. We sing Haggadah as Haggadah because that was the way my mother, a Midwesterner, loved to do it. She was a boisterous, you know, almost larger than life character, and she was also a swimmer. So the idea was to hold your lungs, your breath, as long as you could, particularly for the last stanza. It's not clear to me that anybody until recently, when I shared with them some commentaries around Haggadah, that anybody understood actually what we were singing about. It was just fun. And now that they know what we're singing about, it has a little bit more meaning, but the idea of carrying on this tradition from generation to generation and introducing it to now a fourth generation is quite, it's fun.
I love it. I love it. I like the inclusion of cardio training into your Seder. I think that's really
and because none of us are competitive, you know.
Right? Yeah. It's great. Thank you. And I'm just going to sort of say thank you. The folks who are putting questions in the chat, thank you. I'm jotting them down and we'll make sure that we have time to come to them. So keep throwing them out there, and Eileen will post in links where it makes sense, but we can also circle back to some. So I'd love to hear about, you know, we've had a year of these gatherings. I know you are in geographic proximity to some of your family members, maybe not to all of them. What successes have you found in the last year of creating multi-generational gatherings, whether online or in person?
We have ritualized and calendared. At the beginning, it was a weekly family Zoom meeting, and now it has become a monthly one because the appetite for weekly disappeared around month 3. And what is wonderful about it is that, with rare exceptions, they're unscripted. Occasionally we'll have an activity, and I took over the hosting of this from my brother. I always have an activity in my back pocket in case there's a sense that we need something. Most of the time we don't. And what's wonderful is that the geographical dispersion of the diaspora of our family has disappeared in the face of this. And we have people all over the country and at all different stages and ages of life. And it has been an incredible bonding opportunity for us. So.
Yeah. David, any tips?
Well, Well, for us, I mean, we don't do it's the interesting thing for us is that specifically around, if referring specifically to Zoom or otherwise, or
Either way, yeah.
well, I mean, we know in the study, in our national study of Jewish grandparents, is that a lot of the good stuff happens in the moment at home. You know, it's not scheduled, it happens in the car. So, you know, on a whim, we'll get together for meals. We'll join our granddaughter for breakfast, and while she's eating her breakfast, we'll hang out, and not planned, not scheduled, just being there in the moment. You know, from time to time, you know, we sit and have dinner, and she'll eat dinner for 45 minutes while we're schmoozing. So
I think that's great. I think
just
it's,
trying to like, yeah.
no, that had,
We've
Not
also
finished.
had, both David and I have had the multi-generational experience of having children move in and live with us, along with grandchildren, and that has both its its exuberant and joyful moments and stressful as well. So
Yeah.
that has been an incredible learning experience for us. And we know of many grandparents around the country from a COVID study that we did who have also done the same. Either moved into their children's houses, or more often, more frequently, it's the kids are leaving homes that are too small. Their jobs are portable, and they come to the grandparents.
right,
And
right.
and that has been, I just completed, my kids just moved out after living with me since Thanksgiving. And they just moved out 2 days ago back to their home in Baltimore. They were having a renovation. And at the same time, my daughter and I have been homeschooling her 2 young children, the 3 and 5-year-old, for it will be a year now. So
Hola kavod.
I'm not rehearsing the 10th plague. I mean, the plague of darkness. It's yeah, I'm sitting in my dark room, but
I
it does
think-
feel like light has come back into my life. a little bit.
Nathan just summarized this really well, right? Like, is this Hallel or is this the plagues? I think
Yeah,
that
it's
is
somewhere-
perfect. Thank you, Nathan. Yeah.
A pinball machine.
A little bit. So I would love to hear about, you know, the Diana Seder. This is your second iteration of this wonderful text. It was incredibly popular last year. I know we're already seeing folks really gravitating to it again this year. What was the inspiration? And then what led you, where can we find like new ideas in it for 2021?
So the inspiration for it actually came from my experience. I have a large family. We're 45 when everybody is all in. And I was also observing the moment. I saw all these amazing resources being developed by educators. It's sort of like, you know, we want you to have everything that we have. And the move that they were making was the assumption that people were going to have the time and the inclination to go and put all of these things together, when what I observed and heard in my own family was people were literally struggling to keep their heads above water. The idea at the end of a day, after having spent an entire day, usually in some sort of digital interface, was exhausting to them. To go at the end of the day and try to create something. And I also knew from my experience, I've done a lot of work in ceremonies and rituals in a civics site that I've been doing, a civics project that I've been doing for the past 18 years. And I also knew that maintaining the interest of a multi-generational group in a Zoom platform for longer than 10 minutes was not practical for most people, particularly if your age range runs from, you know, toddlers to 90 years old. And so, and I checked all of this with my family. Originally, you know, it's like, what would you do? So my older sister said, I'll do 5 minutes. And her daughter pipes up and says, Mom, that's ridiculous. It's got to at least be 10 minutes. And I said, okay, that's my challenge. I will try to create a 10-minute experience that will include some of the significant elements, and I'll stop there. That was the inspiration.
Did you get it done in 10 minutes last year is my question.
We got it done in about 15 minutes last year.
Okay,
And,
awesome, yeah.
And I didn't think of it as getting it done.
Right.
It was, we had a significant experience together with one another with enough of the familiar elements of the Seder that it felt like we were doing something authentic. The other thing that was really exciting for me was that, and I don't know how many people on the call have the same experience. Our family is emotionally wedded, and I understand why this happens, to a 1947 Haggadah written by Mordecai Kaplan. And that is what we use because that's what our grandfather used. It, you know, they have wine, you know, the shtick that we all talk about. They have wine stains, they have people's names in them, and yet that Haggadah is so outdated in terms of the way that it functions. And so this was an opportunity to introduce people to the idea that we can do something really different. And that was so exciting that people said at the end, can we do this moving forward? Because it was that successful in terms of interaction, in terms of engagement, in terms of brevity. I mean, obviously, if we were doing a full Seder, it would probably be 25 minutes, but that would be it for my family, for this group.
Right. I think what I love so much about what you shared is the idea of both significant experience and honing in on those elements that you love the most. I think that's the takeaway we've really tried to share with everyone in thinking about these Seders. And honestly, whether it's an in-person or a Zoom or a hybrid, it's what are the pieces that you love the most, and what are the pieces that without this it would feel incomplete. Right. Those are the pieces that you do. If you know, my guess is for many of us, two hand washings is maybe more than enough. Right, it's maybe one too many, but maybe not, right? So if one of those hand washings is not meaningful for you, I think, you know, we are all here saying we give you permission. You should feel endowed to take that permission to release that element of the Seder. Has anybody found
that's why I called it the Dayenu Seder, by the way.
Yeah,
it was the idea of giving people permission, especially in this particular moment, to do what will be enough for them. And we never said it, didn't want to make it a pedagogical statement, but it's embedded in the whole experience.
Yeah. David, are there things in this Haggadah for this year that you're excited about for 2021, or that you're excited about with your family?
Well, the truth is, I haven't really thought about it yet because I've been so busy with other things.
2.5 whole weeks away. I don't know.
Yeah, you know, every time I see the matzah at Costco's, I get depressed.
Yeah.
You know, what's interesting, this is the second remote Haggadah that we've had, a remote Seder that we've had. And so I've been thinking about the transition between COVID and not COVID. And I've been thinking about the fact that in our recent study, twice as many grandparents are using social media, Zoom and other kinds of communication than they did before COVID. So I've been thinking about kind of being more thoughtful about what it means to gather for Pesach, even beyond the end of the COVID crisis. I have a daughter who lives in California. She, you know, sometimes comes and sometimes doesn't. I have, you know, cousins we haven't seen for years, and perhaps there's an opportunity to rethink how we gather, you know, in kind of this new era of distance communication. We used the Dayenu Haggadah last year, and it was terrific because my granddaughter was 2 at the time, and it enabled us to get through it and feel good about you know, having really a wonderful experience. You know, and by the way, you know, I have a cousin who is a Haredi, he's an Orthodox Jew living in Jerusalem, and he says, you know, it's really up to us to create Haggadah seders that are meaningful for us. So it's not like, oh my God, we have to do it a certain way, but we all should feel like we have the liberty to make our own sedarim, and both haggadot.com and the Dayenu Seder kind of give us the tools to do that.
Yeah, I love that. I agree. I think we're seeing, to me, I think that there's one of the blessings of this time, and I know it's hard to feel like there are blessings in these difficult times, but I think one of the real blessings of it is that we've now experienced this. We've had a year of it, and I think that certain things may not go back to the same. My belief is that, you know, my cousin's game night, my cousins and I live all over the country. We've spent a year of, you know, having periodic game nights. I would imagine that after COVID, yes, our schedules will be a little bit busier on a Saturday night again. It might make it a little bit tougher, but that I hope that we'll still be able to do those things, right? You know, I hope that, you know, having the online option for these things, especially, you know, in the states where many of us live in very different places from our immediate families, and also just where we may not live all near our chosen families as well. Last year, I was able to join my best friend's family Seder in Oregon because it was on Zoom, even though they all live within a couple hours of each other in Oregon. So I think that that's really an important piece of it. There was a question in the chat about, and I'll give my take on it. And I'm sure Lee and David may have their own too, but there was somebody asking about the 40-minute time limit on Zoom. First of all, I think you, as Lee and David have shown, that it is possible to do a briefer Seder than that. The other option that we love is this idea of an all-day Seder, or of having, you know, multiple sort of touch points during the day. So you could easily do 20 minutes or a half an hour in like the mid-afternoon, a little bit in the early evening, and a little bit later at night, and just do 3 different or 4 different sort of connection points during the course of the day. Again, especially because both Seders are on the weekend this year, it gives us all a little bit more flexibility in playing with the element of time. But you could do that all day Seder and still stay within your basic Zoom plan requirements. But I'd love to hear if Lee and David, if you've got other ideas there too.
Yeah, I love the idea of a progressive Seder as well. I mean, it's similar to what you were suggesting.
Yeah.
But you could have different people hosting, and hosting around the element that they most relate to.
Yeah.
And
I like that.
that could be really profound and a significant way to involve the entire family, or whoever, all the participants in your Seder experience. So
I love that.
Well, you know, there are also different platforms out there other than
Also that,
Zoom.
yes.
And so you could look into Google has a platform, Facebook has a platform, and others do as well. You know, part of the interesting thing about the good news about the 40-minute limit on Zoom is that I think it's important for us, as much as we feel a sense of responsibility to be true to our traditions, I do think we need to be thinking about what's the limit of attention that people have virtually. You know, 40 minutes into a Zoom conference call, I'm already doodling, you know, and I don't know, you know, checking my email. And so I think, especially if we're dealing with younger kids, to a certain extent, the 40-minute limit, although I do love the idea of tuning in and tuning out, 40, you know, maybe we may be thoughtful about saying, gee, as much as I'd love to do, you know, all the great songs at the end, that, you know, maybe 40 minutes is about what we can, you know, sustain.
I'll also say, just because there's only 40 minutes in the Zoom doesn't mean your Seder has to be 40 minutes long too, right? I think that's the other piece, is even, you know, you could have it so that you're doing a part of the Seder all together, but that the family, especially if you've got littler kids, you know, you're probably not eating the whole meal on the Zoom together, and you could easily get through. And also I will say, I definitely grew up in a family where that second half, the post-meal Seder part,
it fell away.
was a iffy at best prospect.
Yes. Yeah.
But maybe there's like 2 parts of that. Maybe, you know, there is the barech, like the gratitude moment, and the hallel, just a praise moment. Those don't have to be a whole long thing. That could be a moment, you know, we're all gonna go eat on our own now, but before we do that, let's just lift up a moment of gratitude and lift up a moment of praise. And it can be something as simple as singing a song together, or doing a piece about that, right? So there are definitely ways to sort of touch on that back half of the Seder without having to all do it all together or come back online. There was a question about Zoom hosting.
Can I say one?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to say one other quick thing. You know, growing up, my uncle was a rabbi, and it was obligatory for us to do the entire Seder, and it would take, to like, 1 o'clock in the morning. But, halfway through, the kids would go downstairs, and the adults were able to finish the Seder with a different tone and different engagement. And now we have the capacity to do that, perhaps virtually, where the first 40 minutes is the kids' Seder, and the second 40 minutes when the kids are put to bed or whatever, can be a different kind of dynamic where you engage on more kind of higher spiritual or symbolic level.
I love that. I realized from the question in the chat that we maybe need to introduce more about the Jewish Grandparents Network. So my apologies. Lee, David, give us the elevator pitch for the Jewish Grandparents Network, please.
Empower grandparents, advance Jewish life.
That's not even one floor. Look at that.
The Jewish Grandparents Network is a relatively new organization, 3 years old now, same age as my granddaughter. Our goal is to engage and empower grandparents as essential members of our Jewish family and transmitters of Jewish values, customs, and traditions. And if you want more information, we love talking and sharing what we're doing. Just email us at info@jewishgrandparentsnetwork.org, and I will put that in the chat box. So, and also share our website.
So someone is asking how you do multiple hosts on Zoom, and
Yeah.
I don't know if that is the option on the 40-minute version. It is definitely an option on the other version.
Right. Yeah. Like Lisa. Yeah, Heidi. If you have a pro account, you can just go to where it says participants on the side, and then you just hover over somebody and it'll say more, and you can make them a co-host. You can spotlight or unspotlight them. There's different ways to do that. If you don't have the pro account, I'm not sure if you have that ability, but those are all ways to co-host folks on your Zooms.
Rebecca, you had also asked what we're excited about in the 2021 version, what's new. And I think it relates back to what everybody has been talking about, which is first of all, the acknowledgement that we've been in this place for a year. And it is not a new place to us, but it is certainly a challenging and unusual place. So we acknowledge that there is a place where we acknowledge that, and we have reformulated a number of the open-ended questions that sit out in the margins. It's sort of a mini, in some ways Talmudic, in some ways just a text that Jews are comfortable. We're comfortable looking at these, where you have the main experience that you're having, and then on the margins there are either questions or illustrations, so that you can determine as a group how deeply you want to go into one of those sidebar conversations. We also have some new illustrations. We believe strongly in the power of illustration. And a picture's worth 1,000 words. Not always sure that it's 1,000. Sometimes it's 10,000. It doesn't. But the addition, for instance, of 4 Kiddush cups that run the range from a sippy cup to a regular glass to a tumbler to the silver the silver goblet that so many of us treasure and have grown up with, is carrying the message that everybody is part of this experience, and there are no constraints. If you have paper cups and that's all that you can manage, dayenu. And so that, and it's supposed to represent not only the multi-generational nature of our families, but the range of diversity within them. Because the families that most of us now are members of are not the families that we grew up in.
Right. Lee, there's a request in there. Do you want to run through the layout of the Seder real quick? Okay, I will bring that up. Here we are. So this again is the front page, and I'll just point this out again. People get really confused. They're like, what the heck? It's only one page. You just have to, you can either you can just click on this little right pointing arrow here, and that will take you in through the rest of the Seder.
So we give you a preparation, set of highlights, and it's how to use this reading online, because that's not always intuitive to people, and it will be different. We're not telling people this is how you have to do it. It is a suggestion. The leader could send out the link ahead of time, or simply share the document online. At the moment of the Seder. And then we have done, I need to do a special call out to Rabbi Stuart Seltzer and to Jane Irsay. They were part of my team in putting this together. Rabbi Seltzer is a wonderful, wonderful Jewish educator, particularly gifted in creating experiences that are open to families of at all levels of development and engagement with Judaism. And so what we wanted to do was to pick out elements that we knew would be possible for everyone to do, because they don't require special ritual objects, and they don't require, the way we wrote the ceremony is it does not require anybody to step away from the call to participate, because we don't want to, if you lose people, there's a possibility that they may not come back. And so we wanted them to stay together for this entire experience. So that's the illustration that I was talking about. Our illustrations, by the way, done both for this and on our website, are by a wonderfully talented children's book illustrator. Her name is Deborah Zemke, and she is a joy to work with, and has given us, we think, illustrations that are quite lovely. So we also give people some of the understanding, because again, you may have a range that provokes curiosity. So if that's what that word means, what does this word mean? And we didn't try to create a glossary for every single name or every single term, but we wanted to give enough of them to say that these things have meanings associated with them. And then last year, we added a mask to the Seder plate. This year, we're adding a vaccine appointment.
Right, I see it here, yeah.
And so for those who are familiar with Jewish text and tradition, they will understand, everybody's responsible one for the other. And if we save one life, we save an entire world. Those are familiar. To others, it might sound like, oh, that's just a really cool idea. And
Yeah.
So there's an opportunity there as well. This next page is the 10 plagues. The other places, we talk about Nachshon this time, because there have been a number, and we don't say it here, there have been a number of Nachshon, characters, individuals in our lives, in our national life, in the global world this past year. And wouldn't it be amazing to call that out at that moment? But we're not giving you a direction. I mean, we have a significant amount of faith and trust in the creativity of the groups using this. Yeah. Not to be dogmatic or pedantic about this is what you must do.
I think that's really powerful, Lee. I love that. Yeah.
It is one of the principles of the Jewish Grandparents Network. It has been an educational guideline that I grew up with. I was fortunate enough to go to a progressive school, and that is the nature, that is learning for me. And I think it is completely complementary and in sync with what Judaism teaches us in the basic Chavruta model, that you are both learning together. It's not that one person is more valuable because they have possession of a certain sets of knowledge, but that you are discovering things together. And only in that model can you truly discover what is meaningful. By yourself, not so much.
Right.
And then we clearly, somebody mentioned, the impact of COVID and social justice, and our questions are geared towards the issues of social justice without
Yeah.
calling out, now we're going to do our social justice piece.
Right,
And
right.
And that again is a conviction that people inherently understand that the great message in the Seder experience in Passover, it's why we have held so fast. I mean, it is the most celebrated ritual in Jewish life. And so one has to ask, why is that? And it's not only because it tells us this extraordinary story, and who cares whether it's true or not, it's our story, and we're sticking by it. But it's what we learn from this story and what we have an opportunity to pass on to our children and grandchildren. That's why we are obligated to teach it over and over, because it teaches us that because we had this experience, we have a special capacity for understanding, first of all, how horrific it is to be enslaved, and then we, because we were brought out, have the obligation to bring others out of any kind of oppression that we see in the world. And that's been resonating with us for 2,000 years plus. So
Yeah. I love that. I think it's so, somebody at the beginning had asked about social justice, and, I think it's great. I think what I love about this is that it models ways for people to spark that conversation without it necessarily being a social justice focused Seder. Though if that is something that you want,
Right.
we have those options as well.
Right.
But if it is something that you want to make sure has a space at your table, but isn't, the entire meal per se, it's a course at the meal, then I love that you've included that. There was also some questions earlier around interfaith families. And I think that what I love about this Seder is that it works
Yeah.
100%
family
for that.
is deeply interfaith. I tease all the time that we are the Pew Study.
Right.
They actually did model that on our family, but that's not true, but it's what it feels like sometimes.
Right. I will say also, if you're looking for another Seder that is really, I'm just going to put it here in the chat real quick. Give me 1 second. The Jew Belong Seder is another one that was created by our partners there. And that's another Seder. It's definitely more geared for, I would say, older kids and adults.
Yep.
I would say probably it's like a B'nai Mitzvah age and up Seder.
Yep.
But it's really great for families gathering with multi-faith backgrounds. That there are specific places in that Seder lifting up people who are not Jewish, but also just sort of making space for that. And I think really, and Lee alluded to this, the beauty of the Seder, and I think why it is the most widely observed Jewish custom, is because it is so flexible, and because it is so creative, and it is so open to interpretation, that I think also, like, a lot of us, I think sometimes get like, oh, well, is this going to be okay for my, person from a different background, or for my whomever, my, despondent teenager or whomever. Your enthusiasm has such power as a host. I think it's one of the things that I cannot stress enough is whoever you're sharing this with, wants to learn from you, and you as the host, that is part of your holy responsibility as the host, is to infect everybody else with your enthusiasm. This is a good infection. Enthusiasm, always great. I know, I'm sorry, I realized as soon as I said that. But it's a really great way just to get everybody else excited about this experience. And then also so that they continue to pass this tradition on, right? So that when they're, God willing, parents and grandparents, that they're able to host these Seders. I'll also put in a plug here for people who are honorary grandparents. If you don't have biological grandchildren, I think these are also great ways to engage with your grandchildren in kinship, if not in blood. I want to just make sure before we close that there are any other questions that folks can pop in the chat. While you're doing that, I will just make another plug here. We'll share the Jewish Grandparents Network website with everyone. I'm also sharing, here is a link that includes all of our other haggadot.com webinars. And you can register the same way you did for this one. And we'll share that link again in the follow-up email from this session. And then the other piece I just want to share is our website where you can make a donation. Again, we are a small nonprofit. My colleague Eileen and I are full-time employees, and we are so grateful to the generosity of people like Lee and David, who share their mental and creative resources, and to everybody who can make a donation as a part of our work. And again, we are, like public radio, only able to do this because of users like you. Yes, the recording will be shared via email with everyone who registered, and it'll be available on our website. So that's a great way to do it. Somebody had asked about saving the chat. If you are in Zoom and you see the chat sort of on this right side of your screen, right above where it says type message here, in that top right corner are these 3 little dots. And that can allow you to save the chat. I know it's not what do you call it, activated for this conversation. It is, you can do it. It's a setting in your Zoom that when you set up a Zoom, you can do it that way. We will share the links from this call with everybody in the email and with all the upcoming webinars. So don't worry if you missed one of the links in the chat, those will be shared, as well as the Dayenu Seder.
I want to thank people for the questions have been wonderful and really, really interesting. I loved Lewis's caution to us that yes, social justice, not necessarily, don't let it devolve into politics. And I think what he means by that, a contentious conversation, which could easily spin out of control and not be fun for everybody. The most important thing is that this should be, but as well as as provocative and meaningful, it must be fun. It's and I don't mean fun at the pediatric level where we're worrying about the 2-year-olds at the table. I never worry about the 2-year-olds at the table. I let the parents worry about the 2-year-olds at the table. That's not who the experience is for. Right. They're not going to remember this. The 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds will begin to be developing a memory. And that's as, so I pitch high and assume that because we're a family, that children are doing what children always do. They're picking up the modeling that is coming from their older cousins, from their parents, from their grandparents. And that's the most important lesson that they're learning, is that this means something to everybody. And I'm expected to participate at my level for the period of time that we're doing this.
Excellent.
One thing I would say, I just also added to the chat box. We recently sent out a newsletter, activities, resources for Pesach, and so I included a link to that. And if people want to be added to our mailing list, just let us know.
We'd love it.
Awesome. Thank you. And we have a custom at haggadah.com. I'm going to change the view to remove all spotlights so that we can see everybody in gallery. We have a haggadah.com has a custom for ending all of our webinars. And this is just something we like to model as it's nice to end a Seder, any kind of conversation, any kind of gathering with a ritual as opposed to logistics. So we like to invite everybody to put their hands in, and on the count of 3, we are going to shout Seder, and then we're gonna sign off. So, and this is just sort of like our cheers way of saying goodbye. So we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, Seder. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.